For centuries, hidden manuscripts and ancient writings have shaped beliefs. But what if some were used to create a false religion? In this session, we will uncover the secrets, lies, and religious deception buried in a mysterious ancient Egyptian text. We have been talking about religious figures, including Mormons, who have distorted scripture and science to create myths that justify white supremacy. According to the revelation given to Joseph Smith, black skin is a curse.
How blacks got to be cursed according to Mormonism? According to the Mormon doctrine, they were less valiant in the pre-existence. In the pre-existence, there was a war in heaven between Satan and Jesus. And Jesus won. The demons Satan and his direct followers were cast out. The guys that didn't do much in the battle, they didn't fight much, they were cursed with dark skin.
Is that not the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard? So basically he's saying they were lazy, so they were cursed with black skin.
One black lady, talking to Bill McKeever, who's the director of Mormonism Research Ministry, said, "Let me get this straight. When we got this black skin, we were white. We did the wrong thing and we got cursed with it, so we were white. So the white people did the crime, and now we have to do the time." Is that how it works? In Mormonism, the answer is yes. Absolutely.
These folks are insane. But I wonder if things will get better if you convert to Mormonism. Let's see how things worked out for this sister when she converted to Mormonism. She did an interview on Roland Martin's show. Let's listen.
Yes, my next guest, who is ex-Mormon, Archin Bach, joins us right now. And she was told, you can't marry somebody white. She joins us now from American Fork, Utah. Glad to have you on the show. So you were actually told that by church officials?
Yes.
So were you engaged with someone? Were you dating somebody, or were you just inquiring as to who you can marry?
So all of the above. So I joined the church when I was 18, and it's big to get married in the temples when you're Mormon. But the problem is that they were teaching that they're white, males not to marry black people, or anybody not to marry outside their race. They don't want blacks and black people and white people mixing because they said black people were cursed.
So this was actual teachings where you were going to temple?
Yes, because Cain and Abel, when Cain killed Abel, he received the curse. And the curse is put on black people from Cain. We're descendants of Cain.
Okay.
It's the same old racist tropes, you all. She converted and became a Mormon, but she was still cursed.
So when did you leave the church? And when did you inquire about who you could marry, and when did you leave the church?
Okay, so I left the church probably 2016 is when I really left. But when it's a culture, when you join when you're 18, you join the church. I even went on an LDS mission. And so when you're dating, they tell you who you're supposed to be dating. You need to date other members of the church so you can be married in the temple. Only other members can be married in the temple. Well, the thing about that is, sure, you could get married in the temple, but they said that I needed to find a black man. But there wasn't a lot of black people in the church. Actually, there was no black people in the church where I was. Even on my mission, there was no black males. So
do you believe that the Mormon church continues to have a problem with race?
Absolutely.
How so?
Well, 2016, I finally realized they weren't going to learn. But 2016, I have a different mind. And so when President Trump became president, then I was able to see really for sure how people really thought. A lot of things were said to my face, but not as strong as it was in 2016. They didn't care. They cared before, kind of like, maybe I shouldn't say anything, or maybe I should say it this way. God deemed it so. But 2016, they did not care at all.
As the saying goes, as much as things change, they remain the same. The statement reflects the idea that despite superficial changes in society, the fundamental aspects of human nature often remain constant. Yes, people can change, but unless there is divine intervention that brings about a change of heart, the leopard will never change its spots. The religion Joseph Smith created was rooted in white supremacy. And when you consider the character of the man, you have to question everything about him, including his prophecies and writings. There is more than enough proof exposing him as a sorcerer, and he remained a committed Freemason until the day he died. Let's take a look at some of his failed prophecies, and there are many. This comes from the Institute for Religious Research. It says Joseph Smith bore many titles in his lifetime: elder, seer, president, mayor, even lieutenant general. But he is probably best known as the prophet. And prophesy he did, often with great passion, invoking the powers of heaven and the name of God. What follows are 7 prophecies of Joseph Smith, notable for their specificity and appeal to divine authority. So Joseph Smith said that he was given a prophetic word in 1835 that the coming of the Lord would be in 56 years. Well, the 56 years passed in 1891. And then the author quotes Deuteronomy 18:21 through 22 that says, "And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Most High has not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Most High, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Most High has not spoken. But the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him." The question is, was he a prophet of the Most High, or was he being used by the kingdom of darkness? Let's look at another failed prophecy. So he gave a word of prophecy regarding a man named David Patton. This man was supposed to go on a mission. He said, "Verily thus saith the Lord, it is wisdom in my servant David Patton that he settle up all his business as soon as he possibly can, and make a disposition of his merchandise, that he may perform a mission unto me next spring, in company with others, even 12 including himself, to testify of my name and bear glad tidings unto the world." The prophecy was given on April 17, 1838. The man died in October of 1838. Another failed prophecy was given in May of 1843. He said that the United States government would be overthrown in a few years unless they redressed the wrongs committed upon the saints of Missouri. He said there would not be so much as a potsherd left. This says the United States did not redress the wrongs committed against the Mormons, and now over 150 years later, the U.S. government still stands. Do we really need to read any more of them? So, prophet or charlatan? Now we're going to shift gears and look at his translation of the book of Abraham. And just FYI, a lot of scholars believe that this claim about him translating the book of Abraham was the nail in the coffin to prove that Joseph Smith was basically copying texts from the Bible and other ancient sources to create the doctrine of the LDS Church. This article is entitled Translation and Historicity of the Book of Abraham. It says the recent web posting on the Book of Abraham by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints represents new reflection on a document whose authenticity as verifiable history is now officially acknowledged to be in serious dispute. So, in essence, when scholars and researchers pushed back against the validity of the book, the LDS Church came up with various excuses to protect the narrative that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that his writings were authentic. Regarding this book, the LDS Church said that the veracity and value of the Book of Abraham cannot be settled by scholarly debate concerning the book's translation and historicity. They're saying it's not possible to verify the book because the truth of the book is based on faith, sincere prayer, and the confirmation of the Spirit. Now let's watch some clips from a channel called GLM, and it's going to provide some additional information on this, and I'll also share some sources. Let's watch this.
July 3rd, a traveling businessman named Michael Chandler arrived in Kirtland with 4 human figures, together with some 2 or more rolls of papyrus covered with hieroglyphic figures and devices. Now, the founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, had been well established in the eyes of the people as one who could translate ancient languages by the power of God.
So he reversed himself on that one, because Joseph Smith claimed to know how to translate several languages, including Chaldean and Egyptian.
After examining the papyri, Smith claimed that one of the rolls contained the writings of Abraham, another the writings of Joseph of Egypt. Oliver Cowdery later said, Enoch's pillar, as mentioned by Josephus, is upon the same roll. It's important to state just how remarkable this claim is. Our oldest manuscripts of the Old Testament are from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are between the 1st and 3rd centuries BC. And this claims to be almost 2,000 years earlier. I mean, that would make these bits of papyri the oldest biblical manuscripts that we have. Now, what's more is that Joseph claimed that this was an autograph, the original document that Abraham himself wrote. We don't even have any of the autographs for any parts of the Bible that we know of. And in fact, even the gold plates that Joseph supposedly translated to bring forth the Book of Mormon, those gold plates had been taken back into heaven by this point. And just consider what a staggeringly remarkable happenstance this would be, that a random traveling businessman would happen to have in his possession a 4,000-year-old autograph written by the great patriarch himself. I mean, either this truly is a great work of God in bringing forth Scripture in this latter day, or it was a fraud from the very beginning.
Now let's look at a few things regarding the structure of the book, and we'll go back to his presentation. This information comes from Scripture Central. This says, the Book of Abraham is narrated in an autobiographical voice that is consonant in tone and style with Joseph Smith's other scriptural productions. Like the Book of Mormon, it purports to be a historical narrative, although it does contain poetic and literary elements such as parallelism and a brief soliloquy. It says the text recounts scenes from the history of the eponymous biblical patriarch and offers a personalized glimpse into Abraham's life as he flees his idolatrous kinfolk in his homeland of Ur of the Chaldees. I'll drop down. It says, some of the content in the book parallels passages from the book of Genesis, but its opening act, or chapter 1, and grand cosmology, chapter 3, have no biblical correlation. Unlike any other book of Latter-day Saint scripture, the book of Abraham is appended by 3 facsimiles, which serve to visually illustrate the text's narrative and draw readers into its cosmology. And those facsimiles are going to be important. Let's keep going.
The Latter-day Saints believed Joseph's claim, and so they scrounged together the cash to purchase Chandler's entire exhibit for $2,400. And if you do the math, that amounts to around $88,300 in today's cash. Joseph started working on the translation of these documents, and though he didn't complete their total translation by the time he died in 1844, in Times and Seasons, which is a Nauvoo publication, the first version of the Book of Abraham was released in 1842. Abraham says that the gods organized and formed the world using pre-existing eternal material. They, that is the gods, organized and formed the heavens and the earth. It also teaches that God sent man to earth to test whether or not he would obey his commandments. And if he does, God would grant him glory. And we will prove them herewith, to see if they will do all things whatsoever the Lord their God shall command them. They who keep their second estate shall have glory added upon their heads forever and ever. It also includes what 9th president of the church, David McKay, says was the only scriptural basis from withholding the priesthood from those with black skin. McKay wrote, "I know of no scriptural basis for denying the priesthood to Negroes other than one verse in the Book of Abraham, 126.
The curse about black skin seems to be a common thread in his prophecies and in his writings.
The Book of Abraham also includes 3 facsimiles, 3 images that are found on the original papyri. In The Pearl of Great Price, Smith actually walks through the images and provides an interpretation of what's going on. I have The Pearl of Great Price right here. You can actually see facsimile number 1 right there. Figure number 1 is seen to be the angel of the Lord. Figure 2, the guy laying there, is said to be Abraham fastened to an altar. And you can just look at this whole thing and kind of see some of the things that he identified. But the point is, when Joseph looked at these facsimiles, he identified the images with particular people and particular events.
So let's just pause here for a second. Here's the first chapter of the book. And you can see it's called the Book of Abraham. It says, translated from the papyrus by Joseph Smith. Note that it says he translated the book. It says a translation of some ancient records that have fallen into our hands from the catacombs of Egypt. The writings of Abraham, listen, while he was in Egypt, called the Book of Abraham, written by his own hand upon papyrus. Now listen to verse 1. In the land of the Judeans, at the residence of my fathers, I, Abraham, saw that it was needful for me to obtain another place of residence. What's wrong with that picture? When he was in Egypt, his name was Abram. He was known as Abram during that time. He didn't know that his name would be changed to Abraham. Why would he refer to himself using a different name? So it just so happens that after Joseph Smith died, the LDS Church misplaced the documents, and they thought that it had been destroyed in the Great Fire of 1871. But fragments of the papyri were later found in the archives of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And this opened a can of worms, you all, because scholars were then able to examine it and discover that Joseph Smith had no clue about translating Egyptian texts. They found out that what he called writings of Abraham was actually Egyptian funerary texts.
A professor from the University of Utah was visiting the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. He accidentally discovered that some of the original papyri had ended up there. Over a year later, on November 27, 1967, Deseret News recorded this. A collection of papyrus manuscripts, long believed to have been destroyed in the Chicago Fire of 1871, was presented to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here Monday by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Included in the papyri is a manuscript identified as the original document from which Joseph Smith had copied the drawing, which he called facsimile number 1, and published with the Book of Abraham. In the 1968 editions of the LDS Church's official Improvement Era periodical, they publicly acknowledged this find and provided the first clear images of the original papyrus manuscripts. Imagine the excitement that Latter-day Saints must have felt at this announcement. I mean, the original Book of Abraham manuscripts right here. And this would prove, certainly beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Joseph Smith was really a prophet. He was really a seer, and he really had the ability to translate ancient languages. These documents had absolutely nothing to do with Abraham or Joseph or even Enoch. What's more, as I showed you earlier, Joseph gave a prophetic interpretation of the 3 facsimiles. But when these were compared with the numerous near identical images found in other Egyptian burial texts, they just had a totally different interpretation. Joseph took a common image that he didn't know was common, and he got the interpretation wrong.
The other thing that can't be overlooked is that he didn't see a white man laying on that table. So he purposely changed the colors. But it gets worse, you all. Pieces of the papyri was missing. He decided to use a pencil to fill in the portions that were missing. So Joseph Smith had managed to cover his tracks with his other writings. He said the gold plates were taken back to heaven. So that meant no one could go back and validate the writings. The other excuse given by the LDS Church was that he received divine revelations, so it wasn't possible to verify it by natural means. But when they found the lost fragments, it exposed the lie. Then they tried to backtrack and say, well, Joseph Smith didn't claim to have the ability to translate other languages. But let's go back to this article from the Prophecy Institute. It says, despite the insistence of the new LDS position paper, it is not true that Joseph Smith did not claim to know the ancient languages of the records that he was translating. In his published 1844 Appeal to the Free Men of the State of Vermont, the Brave Green Mountain Boys, and Honest Men, Smith claimed to know Chaldean and Egyptian, among other languages. Let's go on. With the Book of Abraham now confirmed as a perhaps well-meaning but erroneous invention by Joseph Smith, the LDS Church may well devote some reflection to the status of the text. The former Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, since 2001 renamed the Community of Christ, avoids this issue by treating the Book of Abraham as speculative writing by Smith, not as a document of historical truth. Now let's look at Brigham Young University's statement on this. It says the Book of Abraham's origins are rooted in the discovery of ancient Egyptian papyri by Joseph Smith and his companions. These papyri, which were part of a collection of antiquities, were sent to America in 1825 and included 11 mummies and several papyri. The papyri were separated from the mummies and were sold off, with some pieces reaching the University of Pennsylvania Museum and others reaching Junius Booth. The Book of Abraham was translated by Joseph Smith by the gift and power of God, and it was published as a translation of these ancient records. Do you see the wording? They're trying to say it was a revelation, not that he knew how to speak the languages. It goes on to say the exact nature of the relationship between the Book of Abraham and the papyri is still a matter of speculation. Speculation? What is there to speculate about? It goes on to say, but the translation process is believed to have been conducted by Joseph Smith, who was one of the weak things of the world, called to speak words sent from heaven. The LDS Church did their best to spiritualize this when folks started calling them out on this Book of Abraham deception. And some folks fell for it, But let's take a look at this journal article written by BYU Studies Quarterly, and it's entitled, How Did Joseph Smith Translate the Book of Abraham? It says, whatever Joseph's precise method of scriptural translation, which he specified only as being by the gift and power of God, more important is what he produced. As Hugh Nibley recognized, the prophet has saved us the trouble of faulting his method by announcing in no uncertain terms that it is a method unique to himself, depending entirely on divine revelation. In other words, there is no way to prove what he says, because the method is unique, and some folks are buying that. It goes on to say that places the whole thing beyond the reach of direct examination and criticism, but leaves wide open the really effective means of testing any method, which is by the results it produces. The results of Joseph Smith's inspired translations are books of scripture that appear beyond his natural ability to produce. So what can we truly take away from Joseph Smith's writings? We can see that he intentionally distorted this ancient Egyptian text. We see a lot of deception and lies in his prophecies. The historical context of his writings, especially concerning race, is problematic and reflective of colonial attitudes rather than divine truth. So we're going to end it here and continue the discussion next time. But if this message has been a blessing to you, please remember to hit the like and share it. You're also welcome to subscribe if you have not already done so. We normally upload messages on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Yah willing. Join me next time.